Divorce sucks, but it doesn't have to define you. You're not alone, and you're not powerless, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. Welcome to The Difficult Divorce, a podcast that cuts through the drama and confusion to give you clarity, confidence, and straight-up real talk. Hosted by Molly Rosenblum, family law attorney, fierce advocate, and the one you want in your corner when it all hits the fan. Each week, we'll break down the legal, the emotional, and the unexpected so you can take back control. Because smart decisions start with straight answers.
Welcome back to The Difficult Divorce, where we help you navigate the toughest moments with real answers and practical tools. My name is Anthony, and as always, I'm here with Molly Rosenblum, the founder of the Rosenblum Allen Law Firm located in Las Vegas and one of Nevada's top family law attorneys. Today we're diving into one of the most common and emotionally charged questions people ask during the divorce process. Can I keep the house? So I ask you, Molly, why is the house such a hot topic in divorce cases?
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, having a house in a divorce case is one of the most difficult and common topics that we deal with. And this is because your home is more than a financial asset. It's your home. It's where your kids grew up. It's tied to your routine, your identity, your stability. And when you're going through a divorce, you're already facing so much change. So keeping your home can feel like holding on to something familiar. But if you're in the divorce process, you need to think about the emotional and the legal ramifications of keeping your home.
So speaking legally, how does Nevada handle home ownership in a divorce?
Nevada is a community property state, and that means that anything acquired during the marriage is presumed to be owned 50-50. This includes your house. Even if only one spouse is on the mortgage or the title, your house is still considered a community asset. Of course, there are exceptions, especially if one party used separate property to buy the home or there's a prenuptial agreement in place. But in most cases, if you've purchased your home during the marriage, regardless of whose name it's in, it is likely going to be considered a community asset, and therefore it is subject to division when you get divorced.
What if somebody really wants to keep their house? How do you figure out if it's realistic for them to be able to keep it or not?
Great question. So first we'll look at affordability and ask our clients, can you refinance the mortgage into your name alone? Do you make enough money that you can afford the mortgage payment by yourself or with a friend or a family member who's willing to co-sign with you? The next question is, can you buy out your spouse's interest? So remember, it's not just about keeping the home. It's about whether you can actually afford to, especially in this day and age. Most of our clients are looking at mortgages that they took several years ago when rates were really, really low. So now when they're looking at buying out their spouse or refinancing their home, they're looking at going from a 2% interest rate to a 6 or even a 7% interest rate. And that drastically changes the monthly payments. And the clients have to ask themselves, can I really afford this? Does it make sense to try to keep this house? And if this is the road that you're going down, you'll need to show that you have the income and the credit to handle the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance. Sometimes people get emotionally attached and don't think about the long-term cost, and that's where things can really go sideways.
Okay, let's say the house has equity. How does that get divided?
That's a great question. So first we have to determine what the fair market value of the house is, and that can happen a few ways. One, you can hire an appraiser and come up with an appraised value of the home. But what most people do, because they don't want to spend the money to get an appraiser, is they'll look at different websites like Zillow, Redfin, or Realtor.com. They'll take like an average of what those websites look like, and they'll come up with what they think the fair market value of the home is. And it's always best if you and your spouse can agree on this number. Otherwise, you're going to have to rely on a judge to make a determination on what fair market value is. And that can just delay things and get really expensive. Then we need to look at what's owed on the house. So this includes your mortgage, but it might also include other things if you have a HELOC or a second loan, or if there are liens on the property. So we look at what is that fair market value. We subtract out everything that's owed that's secured by the home, and we use that to calculate what the equity is. So then once you have that equity number, you're going to take that number and divide it by 2. And that's the amount you're going to have to come up with to buy out the other person. So if, for example, you have a house that's worth $200,000 in equity, the buyout number is going to be $100,000. And then you have to ask yourself, is this feasible? Does this make sense? Can I afford to buy out $100,000? And how am I going to do it? Am I going to do it with cash? Am I going to have to refinance the house like we talked about earlier? And maybe that's going to change my interest rate. Or do I have other assets that I can count against that $100,000? So let's say, for example, you have a retirement account that has $200,000 in it. Well, it might make sense that you keep the house and the other person keeps the retirement account. Or maybe you offset the value of vehicles to get that $100,000 number down. So that's how we look at calculating equity and how we look at dividing up. But it all kind of goes into one pile, and we just take those numbers and start to move them around to determine how to make that equity number feasible for the person that wants to keep the house.
Does custody ever play a role in who gets to keep the house?
Custody is separate from the assets and debts. So just because one parent is going to get primary physical custody, it doesn't mean that parent is also going to get the home. What it probably means is the parent who has primary may be able to stay in the home for a limited period or while the divorce is pending. But at the end of the day, the home is an asset of the marriage and it has to be divided.
So Molly, what are some key things that people should consider before deciding that they're going to fight to keep the house?
So there are 4 things that we ask clients to consider if they are really deciding whether or not they want to fight to keep that house. The first thing is, can you afford the home long term, not just today? So like we talked about, you may be looking at a higher interest rate. You may not have the income on your own in order to be able to afford that home. So you have to really think about, I know I want to keep this house, but does it make sense? Can I really afford it? The next thing to think about is, will keeping the house prevent you from getting a clean break financially? And what we mean by that is, if you're relying on the other person to pay alimony or to pay child support, you're not really getting a clean break, and you're not going to be able maybe to afford that house on your own without those things. And you've got to think about, what's going to happen if my ex doesn't pay that alimony or pay that child support? Am I going to still end up losing my house? So we try to look at the whole picture with our clients and get them to understand that keeping the house doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting a break from your ex. It means you're still depending on them to pay for certain things and still depending on them to be able to keep that house. The next thing that we ask our clients to consider is the house holding you back emotionally from moving forward? Are you digging in and saying you want to keep the house just because you don't want your ex to get it, or because you have some emotional attachment to the home, like most people do? And that's going to keep you from being able to move on from the divorce. And in those cases, we ask our clients to really consider why they're trying to hold on to this house for so long. Finally, we ask our clients to think about, would selling the home and getting a fresh start give you peace of mind or financial freedom? So again, it all just kind of goes together, and sometimes selling the home can really give you that peace of mind, that clean break, that financial freedom to do other things and to move on from this marriage. Sometimes keeping the house is the right move. Other times letting it go is the smartest choice you can make.
So whether you're trying to stay or walk away, the key is being informed and strategic, not emotional. Thank you, Molly, for breaking this down. If you're going through a divorce in Nevada and wondering what your rights are when it comes to the house, don't guess, get good legal advice. Visit our website at rosenblumlawlv.com to schedule a consultation or find more helpful resources. And hey, if you did find this episode helpful, please give us a like, follow, and share The Difficult Divorce with somebody who might need it. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to The Difficult Divorce. Follow, review, and share if this helped cut through the noise. Find more tools and real talk on our website at rosenblumlawlv.com. And be sure to tune back in for the next episode. Because in divorce, what you don't know will cost you.